I'm actually using Emily's toothbrush. All kinds of super glue. Yeah, it sticks out a little bit. These guys are all ready to go. All right, y'all, we gotta talk again. All right, so today's mission is to make sure all these torches here are all mounted on a frag plug. Now, all of these corals came from Chevy. Well, most of them came from Chevy because he was breaking down his reef tank. He's a local hobbyist. And I am not 100% sure how they mounted. I can see, I think some of them does not have the plug stem. Well, actually, this one I cut, I believe. So some of them may need to be remounted onto a regular frag plug that can be just inserted into this rock right here that I picked up last week. This is, I later learned, a AquaRock, and just really, really beautiful. I bought this locally for, I think it's like 90 bucks. Of course, this came used, so the regular new price will be a little bit higher. But I like it because of how dramatic the shape is. I feel like it's pretty minimalist in terms of rockscape. If I insert it here, it's gonna look nice. It's gonna play really well against this other piece of rock as well. So that's a plan at least. So the first step, make sure all the torch corals is on a legit frag plug. Yeah, we'll see. I feel like a lot of things that's happening to my reef tank is kind of like playing it by years. I have the best plan laid out, but usually it goes some other direction and we just make the best out of it. But in this particular case, first thing first, I'm gonna go ahead, pull the corals out and make sure they're mounted on a nice plug. All right, we're gonna use this opportunity to clean out some of the algae that's growing on the frag as well. I like how I'm like bending down to talk to you guys. Cleaning out the algae, I'm using a tweezer to pull out the larger chunks. For the finer micro algae that I cannot pull out in chunks, I'm actually using Emily's toothbrush to brush them off. Hopefully she does not watch this video. I wanna make sure that I do not accidentally brush the tissue. The toothbrush can really just get into the crevices and enlarge those really stubborn algae. But again, just be really careful and be gentle when you're around the tissues. Last thing you want is like really just irritate and pissed off the tissue that you're trying to help. And I'm gonna give a nice brushing on the plug as well to remove any of these microalgae. All right, good to go. All right, now we get to the trickier bits, like this one right here that does not have a stem. It's on a disc, it doesn't have a stem. So let me see, I'm pulling it out. I kind of like how encrusted that disc is. So I think one thing I could also potentially do is that if the bottom is flat, I could even snip off a frag plug stem from my legit frag plug and just super glue it onto there. Let's pull it out and see how it looks. I have to say I did a really good job when I was super gluing this frag onto the rock. It took quite a bit of effort, and I want to make sure I irritate the tissue enough that it closes up before I just pull the whole thing out of the water. So the bottom of this disc has all kinds of super glue that I did, but that's fine. Because of my experience, the super glue it's pretty easy to just kind of snip off with a bone cutter cleanly, but I just want to be conscious of not applying too much pressure onto the stem, between the stem and the disc. Otherwise, I'm going to break the frag off the frag disc, which is not what I want at the moment. At the moment, I want to preserve the disc and just super glue a stem onto this disc. Okay, all right, I think this is fine. All right, here's the frag plug that's gonna donate the stem. I could even just super glue the whole plug onto the disc, but that's gonna create a little thickness I do not want, just for aesthetic reason. There we go. Apply super glue gel and kind of dab it in a little bit, make sure it gets into all the crevice. Rotate it a little bit to find a good fit. Right there seems perfect actually. And instance, I just kind of set the super glue immediately. Look at that, perfect. The plug stem is actually a little bit longer than what I'm used to. Well, let's see here. Yeah, it sticks out a little bit, but it's not terrible. Some of the hole may be a little bit deeper. Yep, like this one. Yeah, that'll work. And if it turns out to be too long, I actually picked up this sweet little rotary tool or Dremel, and we can just kind of file down the stem. But again, I'm gonna use my toothbrush, or Emily's toothbrush, to kind of clean off the frag a little bit, make sure there's no algae. Look at all those algae. And we're gonna put it back in the tank. Okay, now the last 3 torches I want to address are all glued onto the same rock, so that's going to be tricky. I won't be able to pause and then talk to you guys. I just have to do them in a row. I'll pull the whole rock out, try to see if I can just kind of pull each of these individual frag plug out. If not, we gotta figure something out. And I wanna make sure I have enough space. I do have the rack lined up. I can probably fit 2 torches here and probably 1 more here. I can put them a little bit closer. Or I can put that one with this one because these 2 seems to be Indo gold, and they can park next to each other. All right, let's do this. There we go. Oh, these are super glued down really well. Wait, nope. All right, first one is a disc. Let's drop it in the water here. Second one, oh man, do I have to bust out the Dremel? All right, this one's a little bit tough. Let me do this one first. All right, this one is also a disc. Perfect. Third one, I see a little crevice I can get in. Try to, there you go, excellent. Third one, also a disc. Look like all of these are either disc or flat plug with the plug cut out. All right, now I'm left with this piece of flat rock that has a lot of algae. I'm just gonna dry this rock out. So I think we kind of lucked out because all those discs kind of break off really cleanly. What I'm gonna do right now is just kind of same thing, clean off the frag plug with any of the algae, and then I'm gonna actually glue stems of flag plugs onto these frags. The stem of the frag plug that I use is a little bit longer than I'm used to. So I'm gonna use my standard frag plug from, I think, Ocean Wonders. I use those first. Those are a little bit shorter, stubbier stubs, and I think it would work just as well. Versus the other one is a little bit too long. It may bottom out and cause the frag to kind of shake in the water current. So in a situation where I need to kind of address these kind of like almost like hair algae, I find that Emily's toothbrush has been excellent at the task. For a large, stubborn chunk, of course, tweezers would be great. But for these hairy stuff that kind of like just stay on the tissues and whatnot, a nice, gentle brush from the toothbrush works wonders. So this is another one of those tools, non-reefing tool that I really like. But again, you just gotta be really careful as you get closer to tissue, because like Euphyllias and some LPS, they have tissue just growing onto the skeleton. So just be really mindful of those. Look, there's a estuary starfish that's hiding among the branches. Not anymore. Being mindful not to stress the stem and the disc where you pop it off. So that one's ready to go. I'm not gonna bore you guys with the same thing over and over again. So just give me a second. I'll be right back with all these things cleaned up, ready to go.
3 days later.
Hey, what's up, reefers? Now it is Friday. I want to show you guys how the torch looks after we have mounted them onto their respective frag plug on. I pulled out all the stops. I pulled out all the frag holders that I have. I never thought I'd use a lot of them, but apparently sometimes I do. We got the Indo torch right here. These guys have always been happy in this tank. I feel like they're probably similar to the New York Knicks torch I got from Joker's Corals in the back. They are flowy, they are kind of poofies, and they're happy. And I think like once I get them mounted onto the AquaRock, I'll probably place them close to each other so we get a nice impressive chunk. We got a spread of different type of torch corals. That one I got from TSA a while back. This is a nice hot pink tip with like neon fluorescent green tentacles. I don't think it's named, but either way, it's fine. It's beautiful. I absolutely love this guy. The unique thing about this one is that it never really poof up for me like this, and it always kind of stay kind of small. So maybe given enough time, it'll be a little bit happier. Sometimes I wonder maybe it's not happy, but when I look carefully, I actually have 2 heads now. It came as 1, so it must be doing okay to have like completely split already. Yeah, it's like 2 heads right here, so I'm happy about that. So sliding over here are the rest of the torch corals that I got from Chevy. I really like this one. Again, I'm not sure what any of these are called, but I just like how they look. I like the coloration. I like the amount of motion it brings to the tank. The only thing that's kind of sketchy is this guy right here. I think I touched on it a little bit early in this video. That polyp was not doing well for a couple weeks already. And I think it has to do with it being shaded initially when it came to this tank, and the flow was not optimal when it's kind of tucked away over there. But I see that instead of the usual all retracted, it's actually peeking back out at the top and it's doing better day by day. So this is looking good. At first I was like, I may, if it decides to brown jelly out, I may need to cut it off. But hopefully I will not need to do that, because it actually looks like that polyp may make it. We'll see, but I'm feeling a lot better. But so these guys all ready to go. They've been on frag plugs for the last 3 days. Now the following step that I have to do, which I don't think I have time to do this week because man, work and personal life has just been insane. But what I need to do is frag off this big chunk of leather. By fragging off, I'm pretty much just gonna chisel out a piece of rock as well because I'm not gonna try to attach this leather to a rock after the fact. It's gonna be a pain. So I chip a little bit of rock off, it'll be a nice chunk, and I need to decide where I want to maybe mount it in the back over there against the wall. I'll bring this onto the mangrove tank. I am not sure yet. What do you guys think? The other thing I've started to do recently in this tank is start doing DIY nitrate. I'm using sodium nitrate from Now Wolf, thanks Telegram. Mix it up, started dosing it, and yeah, things are way happier. So obviously after nitrate, the other thing I want to tackle is the phosphate in terms of like DIY solutions. I look into trisodium phosphate, which has been popular online, but Andre from Reef Moonshiner saw that and jumped in saying that may not be the ideal DIY mixture because supposedly the trisodium phosphate only provide phosphate where the coral actually needs phosphorus. And a lot of the test kit on the market actually test for phosphate, which includes phosphorus, but we don't know the actual amounts of phosphorus within that phosphate, if that makes sense. So some of the products that we buy online to dose phosphate, for example, the one I've been using, the Brightwell Neophos, I think it's called, contains balanced parts, phosphate, phosphorus. I'm still trying to sort out what I want to do with phosphate because DIY looks a little bit more complicated than the DIY nitrate. Andre is actually working on something, got something coming out, so I may try his solution before going back to the standard Brightwell Neophos that I've been buying and using. So that's that. I'll keep you guys posted on how that part advanced. But in terms of DIY nitrate, got the go-ahead from Andre as well, saying that, okay, I mean, the sodium nitrate, perfectly fine. All right, y'all, we gotta talk. Again, since the last video, I've been reading the comments, I've been watching the reaction on social media, and the reaction was swift. This week, there has been a strong movement towards budget reefing, which is a good thing because reefing does not need to be expensive. It's as cheap or as expensive as you want it to be. The reason that I'm sitting in front of the camera talking to you like this again, though, is because there are a couple points I feel like I missed the mark. I didn't really clarify what I meant, and that is totally my fault. Now, first, it is not my intention to create like a us versus dumb or like a budget versus high end or quote unquote more expensive. It's none of that. I feel like there is a place for all these products on the spectrum. So what I was trying to convey in the last video and possibly failed is that us as content creator, we can try to recenter ourselves in terms of the stuff that we share. For example, if we do budget reefing as well as the more expensive reefing, maybe share the budget stuff a little bit more as well, not just the more expensive stuff. And I'm totally guilty of this as well. And that's kind of like my core message. I'm not saying that, okay, these things are way too expensive, not worth it, blah, blah, blah. There are certain things in the hobby that are expensive for a certain reason, and they have their justification. We can go a little bit deeper in the future on those products. And there are, of course, products that's more budget without as much support, as much feature, etc. They cater towards a different group of people, and that is, again, totally fine. I'm not saying that, man, these guys are overpriced. No, that's not the case. If they're overpriced, just don't buy it. That's fine. But the problem is also social media pushing this particular group more than the other group. That's where I was kind of coming in at. The other thing I did not really address in the last video, but kind of hinted on, is that a private equity firm coming in, buying up all these companies. Honestly, I'm neutral about it. I don't think it's bad. I may actually lean a little bit towards good, because I feel like even though they bought all these premier companies, that does not mean they do have a monopoly. Each segment still have competitors, like different companies competing. So I think in that regard, it's going to keep this now larger entity honest in terms of pricing. And privately, as somebody who tried to do startup and stuff like that, I'm just clapping for these smaller companies who started out as startups. They made it. Hard work paid off, and I think that's excellent. The last point I want to address is actually the theme of this channel, and this is totally my fault for not really making it crystal clear. Ever since the beginning, this channel has served to document my journey and growth as a reef hobbyist. Nothing more, nothing less. If you look back to all the videos, for each tank built when I begin, I voice out what my goal for each tank is. This brings us to this tank behind me right here. If you look back to the videos, multiple videos of when I first started this tank, the goal for this big tank has always been going as high tech as I could, and also to keep SPS. And the reason I want to go all high-tech with this tank is because when I was doing the 45-gallon tank, I did not have the resource, I did not have the knowledge to do all those things. But as I start upgrading the tank, I was like, okay, now I have the means to do it. I am at the stage where I'm like an intermediate reefer, maybe a little bit below, but I'm curious about all these things. Is it really as great as people say? Is this really necessary? So I went head first, dove deep, went all high tech. So going back to my point, this tank has always meant to be high tech because I'm curious. This, again, is documenting my journey as a reef hobbyist, and I'm at that point that I'm getting gear envy. I want to see like what these things are about and is it really necessary? So bringing it all back, this week has been turbulence in terms of social media as well as my inbox. I had a chance to chat with a couple of you guys that include somebody who's really special, a OG reefer that I respect, especially after talking to him, and he shared some of his thoughts in terms of what he would like to see change in terms of today's social media for reef keeping. And the chat with this gentleman really lit a little fire under my butt because it shares some really interesting scientific information that had been proven for a long time. However, we've just been using product or following instruction without knowing the scientific backings behind it. And once he started explaining some of these things, I'm like, dude, this is interesting. How come nobody like is really talking about it? And he was like, I mean, the information's out there. Just the fact that nobody, I guess, is just too much of a read and nobody really want to share, or people just want like a quick start, quick fix. Makes sense. I'm one of those guys. But this got me interested. It's almost like a return to the basics of reefing. Why not start from the most basic understanding and try again? Now I know all the awesome tools that can help me success. Now I gotta figure out, okay, first of all, let me strengthen my basics so that I don't need this best tool. And later on, once I get to a point where I know how to use those tools even better, then maybe I see even more values in using those tools. So I think that's a really enticing goal as a reef keeper. So with all that said, and I've tried out all these more expensive gadgets, what does that mean? First thing first, most important thing I gotta remind myself is that I want to be authentic. I do not want to sacrifice authenticity for relatability. What that means to me is that I really enjoy the 135-gallon tank. If I want to be relatable to most reefers, heck, I'm gonna stop pulling gears out, but I think like all the gear works with this setup. So I'm gonna keep it, I enjoy it, I love it. This is the way I'm reefing with this tank. But what I'm thinking about doing is potentially pulling down the mangrove tank at some point. We're not gonna get rid of the mangrove. Mangrove is beautiful, so that's going somewhere. And I'm thinking about spending the time to properly plan and set up another budget tank. This one is gonna be high end, but high end not in the sense of cost. Anyways, that is just a thought right now, and I am pretty excited about it, but at the same time, it's gonna be daunting, and this is gonna require me to humble myself and to just learn from people, start from scratch. We all know the quote unquote basic, but there's more. How about the science behind it? Can I make it my own, like make it my own knowledge, and then share the journey with the rest of you guys without parroting? Hey, Sunday Moki here. One of the part audio got kind of funky. I could not use it, but it's important. One thing I really want to point out is that the amount of subscribers or likes one person get does not equate expertise. What I mean by that, if you just look at the stats of my channel, I get okay amounts of subscriber, a decent amount of view, but that does not mean I'm an expert in this subject at all. Far from it. There are a lot of things I still need to learn. There are a lot of things I'm doing trial and error, and that's just not the best way to go. So approach my channel as one of your reefing buddy, just sharing his stories with you and just take a look at my personal journey. I'm just one single data point, and oftentimes whatever you see in the video, that's not my final thought yet. I'm going through the process right now. And later on when I look back, I may finally be able to say that, okay, I get it. This is why it worked, or this is why it did not work. So just a general reminder, just like double check all the information you get here online anywhere, whether it's like YouTube videos, Instagram posts, or forums, or maybe blogs. Just make sure you double check it, make sure it's legit before you really put your tank through it. Subscribers, followers, etc. does not necessarily equate to expertise. For example, this person may just be entertaining like me. I go more towards the entertaining route. I would love to share a little bit of like nuggets of maybe knowledge I got along the way, but I'm always try to be really careful in terms of how I present it. This one person's opinion. But yeah, I just want to pop up in here and make sure this important point gets across. Once again, just because someone has a following does not mean that he knows what he's doing all the time. So just keep that in mind and make sure you do your own research. Since the last video, I realized that every single time I sit here, talk to you guys, and open my mouth, it's bad news. So I'll try to keep it brief, even though this was kind of long already. So I hope you guys have some more clarity in terms of where I'm coming from in the last video. Once again, it's not a us versus them, budget versus expensive, none of that, none of that. You do reefing the way you want. Buying certain piece of gear, certain corals make you happy, fantastic, awesome. Nobody's stopping you, nobody's arguing with you on that. With all that said, it looks like a beautiful day outside. So I hope you guys all enjoy the beautiful weather, and I'll see you guys next Sunday at 12:30 p.m. sharp. Bye. Come on.
Let go. Let go.
No,
Just go.
there we go. Oh, finally.